In a recent video, I discussed a training program designed to help the average Joe become a bit more like Batman, physically. A bit more Batman-esque, if you will. It's a nerdy endeavour, no doubt, but Batman is a very cool thought experiment. A look at what the perfect human might look like in terms of physical and mental prowess. But we all know that physical strength is only part of the story when it comes to being Batman. Batman is a super genius. He's the greatest detective on Earth. He's an engineer, a businessman. He can do pretty much anything. So in this video, we're going to ask a new question. What would the brain training program look like if you wanted to try and think more like Batman? Because your brain, just like your muscles, can be trained, can be developed, and it's something I think that more people should do. Many people are happy to dedicate 5 hours a week or more to training their muscles, but they don't give anywhere near the same amount of time to training their brain. And if you do this, you can become smarter, more creative, more successful, happier. So with that in mind, what might a training program for the brain look like? And using Batman as a model, how might Bruce Wayne approach this question? By the end of this video, you'll have an idea of how brain training works, if brain training works, what aspects of your intelligence you can upgrade, and we'll detail a program over on the website. The link will be in the description down below. That'll give you a kind of brain split, or at the very least a brain day to go along with your biceps and your legs. So the obvious place to start is with the one form of brain training that we absolutely know works. This is a guaranteed win, and it's been backed by loads of science. And of course, I'm talking about meditation. On his podcast, Tim Ferriss interviews all kinds of top achievers, including athletes, business owners, programmers, musicians, creators, etc. And he's found that the one thing that most of them have in common is that they all have some kind of meditation practice. But if the word meditation makes you run for the hills, then don't worry. Actually, meditation is very simple. All it really means is focus. So there's lots of different types of meditation. You have mindfulness, you have transcendental, you have Kundalini, you have religious meditation, you have kinesthetic meditation, all kinds of different sorts, but they all effectively mean focusing on one thing or another, or trying to empty your mind, which is a kind of focus. So you might be focusing on a candle flame, you might be focusing on a mantra, which is just a word you repeat over and over, like You might be focusing on a passage from a religious text, you might be focusing on your own body. By being able to focus on one thing, you can choose what you want to pay attention to, what you want to rise above, you can ignore distracting thoughts, and you can focus all of your cognitive efforts onto solving one problem or onto reacting to the world around you. Studies show that you can actually build new grey matter through meditation, it can increase connectivity throughout your brain, it can increase the weight of your brain, so there's really no reason not to practice meditation. The best way to start, I recommend, is with mindfulness meditation. It's a very simple one. You can find simple practices on YouTube or on Headspace. Start with just 3 minutes a day, because the big mistake here is to try and bite off more than you can chew and then not stick with it. So just 3 minutes. Set a timer, sit down, and just have 3 minutes of quiet, focusing on your breathing or your body, or listening to a guided meditation. The next place we might think to look is with brain training apps and programs. These are designed to boost your cognitive abilities, so it would make sense to check those out, wouldn't it? Unfortunately, most brain training programs and apps are not really backed by science. They only seem to be able to improve your ability to do those tasks. So you'll carry out some kind of game, like a memory game, and all you're actually going to do is get better at playing that game rather than getting better in general. That's because using our brain is such a complex thing. It's so dependent on the context, it's so multimodal. So just watching something on a screen and picking birds and hens isn't quite the same as using your brain out there in the real world. One systematic review of brain training programs, though, found two that did work. They were Cognifit and Brain HQ. And looking at why these seem to have some kind of benefit, they came up with two explanations. One was that they focused on brain plasticity. If you've watched this channel before, then you'll be familiar with what that is. It's basically the ability for your brain to grow and change shape in response to training. The best brain training programs take this into account by making sure that the challenge is always at the optimum level for your ability, so it gets gradually harder as you improve. It should always be just difficult enough to provide a challenge, but not so difficult enough that you give up. That'll keep you engaged and interested, and being engaged and interested is what promotes the production of dopamine and BDNF, among other key neurochemicals. Don't do brain training that's boring, because you might be forcing yourself to do it, but you're not actually going to be engaging with it in the same way, and your brain isn't going to be as plastic because it's not woken up. If the brain training is boring, it's probably not working. The other thing that could make certain brain training programs more successful than others was focusing on the right aspects of cognitive ability. So one of them is cognitive processing speed, and the other is working memory. Working memory is your ability to hold ideas in your brain for a short period of time. For instance, the ability to hold a phone number in your head whilst you look for a pen, or your ability to know where all the players are on the pitch when you're playing football without having to look up and find them. If you watch one of my other videos, you'll know that working memory is closely related to your visualization skills, meaning that boosting working memory will actually improve your ability to use your visuospatial scratch pad, thereby giving you a far greater cognitive boost than just helping you to write down numbers. You'll be able to visualize your next step in a plan, you'll be able to be more aware of your surroundings, you'll be able to navigate better. The dual NBAC test is the #1 way to improve this, and it's been demonstrated by several studies to work. Basically, it involves looking out for repetitions in a sequence. You can get loads of apps on Android and iOS and PC for free to give this a go if you want. It is quite boring though, and there are better ways to train your working memory. For instance, playing chess, which requires you to know the positions of all the players on the board and to think ahead to know what your next step is going to be. Okay, don't look away from the camera. Close your eyes and then try and visualize the room you're in as much detail as possible, as many items around you as you can. The other aspect of your cognitive performance that can be improved is cognitive processing speed. And this is your ability to make quick decisions, to respond to things quickly, to switch between tasks. Of course, all this sort of thing is very important if you're going to be Batman. An example of a small program used on one of these apps has you looking at objects as they appear on a screen and quickly identifying what they are, even though they're only there in your peripheral vision and for a very short space of time. But again, you don't actually need the app in order to practice this, and this is what I'm really interested in, because in order to improve your brain, all you really need is your brain. The best way to improve your decision-making skills is to make lots of decisions, and the best way to do that is to do some kind of job where you're required to make split-second decisions every single day under pressure. Likewise, if you want to be a better negotiator, then you should be involved in a job that makes you negotiate. Likewise, if you want to be better at problem solving and creative thinking, then being a programmer is fantastic for that. But you don't even have to leave your house in order to do this. For instance, if you want to improve your ability to quickly make decisions, all you can do is task yourself with making quick decisions. You don't need to actually be in an environment where that's critical. Better yet, try rapping. This forces you to quickly retrieve memories. It trains your verbal fluency. It trains your creativity. It puts you in a flow state. All these things. Likewise, if you want to train your ability to retrieve memories, try visualizing an old room that you used to spend time in. Where was the last place you ate out? Try and visualize the scene. What did you order? What did the person you were with order? For bonus points, try to navigate now to that place. Where would you turn? What would you pass on the way? Whether you're walking or you're driving, try and visualize the entire route from your house to that destination. In order to train your brain, all you need is your brain. And there are several different mental drills you can use in order to do this. And it's actually, again, a form of meditation because you're just focusing on a particular task and using your brain, choosing to use your brain in that way. In my recent video on body language, I discussed how knowing the theory of body language isn't enough if you want to become adept at actually reading it. You need to practice it. And the best way to do this is just to go out and practice using it. Sit in a coffee shop or on the train on your commute to work and just watch people around you and analyze their body language. So this is another form of a kind of focus exercise, a kind of form of meditation where you're not actually just meditating. Another example I talked about in my ninja training video where I said that they would sit and listen very quietly to their surroundings, focusing on small sounds, and they'd even have someone drop a pin behind them and see if they could hear it. Again, this is a kind of form of alternative meditation or a mental exercise that you can use anywhere. So the objective is basically to meditate, but instead of focusing on emptying your mind or focusing on just one word, you're focusing on using a specific part of your brain. Depending on who you listen to, there are two different theories on what constitutes intelligence. Some people will say it's modal, that you have different types of intelligence. You have Gardner's theory on multiple intelligences, so different brain areas. Then you have those that say intelligence is more about whole brain thinking, about the connections between different brain areas. Another example of an alternative form of meditation that I really like is productive meditation, from the author Cal Newport, who wrote Deep Work. Productive meditation simply means that you're musing on a topic, on a question, and trying to come up with answers. So say you're writing a book, you just dedicate a set amount of time to focusing on that book, to thinking about it, what's going to happen, etc. He recommends doing this on inspiration walks, seeing as walking, and especially in a lush environment, is fantastic for stimulating creativity. But you could also use this to run thought experiments. Thought experiments are a fantastic way to think more creatively. You ask yourself, if I was given the task of writing the next Bond film, What would I write? You're asleep minding your own business. 3 armed men break into your house downstairs. You have 2 minutes to come up with a plan. Go. Again, you're just getting outside your comfort zone and you're using your brain in different ways. Another form of alternative meditation is something called image streaming. This one is focused on intentionally building your ability to visualize, which, as we've already seen, is closely linked with working memory, which can provide a huge cognitive boost. So image streaming simply involves letting images come to your mind and then describing them out loud as you see them. Apparently this is one of the secrets to why Einstein's brain worked so differently, and I've done a whole post on that. I'll link to that one as well. But unfortunately, just thinking about something is not quite the same as really doing it. Part of the reason for this, of course, is that you have a huge amount of pressure in the real world. You can think about being Batman all you like, but if you're being attacked by a group of thugs, it's all going to go out the window. This is why when training special forces, the military will subject them to extremely harsh conditions intended to emulate the kind of conditions they'd experience in warfare. So they don't only have to make quick decisions and build complex weaponry, they have to do it whilst they're being shouted at by their sergeant, and they have to do it whilst they're in the blistering cold on very little sleep. This gets you outside of your comfort zone and it forces your brain to really focus in a way that you can't accomplish when you're sat at home on the sofa. At the same time, it teaches them to adapt better to stressful situations, and of course this is something that Batman would definitely need and that all of us could use a little bit more of. When building muscle, you subject your muscles to a kind of positive stress, a kind of eustress, and you need the same thing for your brain if you really want to see it grow. Studies have shown that the top performing Olympic athletes and the top performing military personnel are the ones who can react better to highly stressful situations. These are the ones that show an extreme stress response. They produce a lot of adrenaline and other hormones, but at the same time, it doesn't make them stressed and confused. It doesn't cause them to shut down. Looking inside their brains, it seems that the reason for this is because they produce extra amounts of neuropeptide Y and DHEA. These are interesting because DHEA buffers the effects of cortisol in the hippocampus. That means that whilst you might be very aroused and be producing a lot of adrenaline, you're still going to have access to your memories, to your reasoning. At the same time, neuropeptide Y seems to reduce the negative effects of adrenaline. Meditation can help to improve both of these things, but likewise, so too can exposure. You need to get used to being in stressful environments. So get outside your comfort zone, put yourself up for that difficult challenge at work, go up and speak to a stranger, do something that makes you feel socially awkward. But what's not quite as good as putting yourself in that situation and subjecting yourself to stress is to simulate it, because the military also look at gaming tournaments when they're recruiting drone operators. That's because a computer game requires many of the same things. It requires you to make quick decisions. It requires you to juggle multiple different inputs, multiple different variables. And many studies have shown that computer games are fantastic for brain training, improving your visual acuity, your decision making, your memory, your visual spatial awareness. And this is especially true of first-person shooters. And of course, this makes sense because you're placed into an environment where you have to learn new controls, then you're scanning the horizon for bogeys, deciding which target to prioritize, quickly aiming and shooting using your reflexes. And what would be even better, of course, would be virtual reality, so submerging yourself even deeper into the virtual world where you have to use 360-degree awareness. And of course, hopefully the astute of you have realized that sports would probably do all these things as well, especially ones that require you to work in a team, to be more aware of your surroundings. So computer games and sports are a fantastic way to build your brain, especially if you're subjecting yourself to new challenges in those areas all the time. But then you might be wondering why David Beckham isn't a super genius. And the thing is, he probably is in some capacities. He probably has great visual spatial awareness, great body awareness. He's very quick to make decisions, etc. So we need to practice a spectrum of things if we want to become the best version of ourselves mentally. So we also need to keep learning, keep developing those new skills. And that, of course, is one of the big things about Batman is he can do pretty much anything. Anything that the writer requires him to do, he can do. I think everyone should be constantly learning something. Lately, I've been developing my After Effects skills, I've been learning new programming, I'm learning hacking. Doing this not only upgrades your repertoire of skills, which is really one of the biggest ways to open up new possibilities, at the same time it also makes your brain more plastic, more focused and more aware. As you learn, your brain becomes better at learning. It produces more BDNF and more dopamine as a result of the fact that you are learning. In terms of what you're going to learn, of course, if you want to be more like Batman, then you might learn hacking and engineering and martial arts and lockpicking. In reality though, I would suggest that you learn something that will benefit you a little bit more, because the big thing about Batman, of course, is his discipline and his iron will. Batman has a mad obsession, an end goal that he's working towards, and that's what allows him to dedicate so much time and effort towards that thing. You probably don't hate crime quite as much as Batman, and so you should focus on something that you want to accomplish that does make you that passionate. We don't really want to become like Batman with our thinking. We want to become the best versions of ourselves by looking to Batman for inspiration. At the same time, work on projects along the way. This will help to crystallize what you're doing, it'll help to contextualize it, and it'll give you more motivation because you'll see yourself progressing in those areas. This will give you an excuse to use that productive thinking, big idea thinking, which I talked about in my Think Like Tony Stark video, and you never know what it might lead to. Of course, there are plenty of nootropics and brain hacks you can use to enhance your neuroplasticity and your focus and your awareness. I'm not going to go into that right now because that's another huge topic. I've already done a long video on nootropics, and I'm going to be coming back to this soon because I'm finally going to unveil my flow stack. What I will say with regards to nootropics is don't focus on stimulants like lots of caffeine or modafinil. All that's going to do is make you wired. Instead, focus on nutrition that will help to reinforce brain health. At the same time, think about energy, metabolic cognitive enhancers, and think about things that will increase your plasticity. So lion's mane has been shown to improve BDNF and nerve growth factor. Likewise, we know that omega-3 fatty acid can boost myelination. We know that it improves cell membrane permeability, allowing for more communication between neurons. And we know that it's effective for fighting inflammation, potentially inflammation in the brain as well. I like choline inositol for a whole bunch of reasons, as well as boosting acetylcholine. It can also help you to increase the number of receptors in your brain, thereby making you more sensitive to all kinds of neurotransmitters. CILTEP is an interesting stack that can potentially boost long-term potentiation, i.e. reinforce those neural connections. Magnesium threonate can boost plasticity, especially during sleep. Turmeric is popular for plasticity. Creatine is excellent for boosting brain metabolism, giving you more energy. And there are plenty of adaptogens and things like L-theanine that'll help you to maintain a calm focus when combined with something like mild caffeine. All of these things are basically metacognitive strategies. So metacognitive strategies basically mean thinking about thinking. You're thinking, how could I have thought better? Next time you do something, ask if you're going about it in the best possible way. Ask how focused you are. Ask why it is that you're not focusing. How could you train yourself to be better at the thing that you're not currently doing to the best of your ability? One of the simplest metacognitive strategies, one of my favorite tricks, is simply to try and do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. Because if you try harder at the thing you're doing, if you try and do it faster and better than you normally do, you'll make it more challenging, more difficult. And remember, that's when you engage, that's when you enter the flow state, that's when your brain becomes more plastic. Anything can be brain training if you approach it in that way. That's one of the main take-homes from all this, and the other is that the only thing you need to train your brain is your brain. And finally, do train your brain. Train it like a muscle, make a brain day, make a brain split. Check out the link in the description down below where I've written one that you could follow. But there's plenty more ideas, and I hope that all this theory in this video has given you some inspiration and some ideas of your own. If not, then I hope it's been a little bit entertaining. Hope you found something here interesting. If you did, then please leave a like, please share it around. That helps me out immensely. Let me know in the comments down below what brain training methods you use, if you have any more tips or brain hacks, what else you'd like to see me cover around this subject. I've got lots more on the way, the Nightwing training, as you know, the YouTube business video, a sleep hack, how to jump higher, how to balance, Shaolin training. If that all sounds awesome, then thanks a ton for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now. Okay, so now I want to count backwards from 200 in threes, and at the same time you're going to hum the tune to Mary Had a Little Lamb.